My dear brothers and sisters, I want to invite you to take a few seconds and pay attention to the cross. Look up to the cross. As you look at that cross, God is speaking to you directly through that cross. What He's saying to you as a person might be different from what He's saying to me right now. And whatever you behold on that cross, whatever impression you get from that cross, whatever message you get from that cross, keep it in your heart as we celebrate this feast today. Today we celebrate the feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross, September 14. It is one of those feasts in the church that we do not move. Ordinarily, we would have been celebrating the 24th Sunday in ordinary time, and I would have been wearing green in ordinary time of the year. But all of a sudden, in the midst of the green vestments we've been using, we are now using red to celebrate this feast of the Exaltation of the Cross. To help us appreciate what we celebrate, I want to take your mind back a little bit to the understanding of the cross among the Jews. At the time of Christ, or before his crucifixion, the cross was a symbol of shame. It was a symbol of disgrace. It was a symbol of pain. It was a symbol of sorrow. It was not a symbol of anything positive. And naturally, anyone to be crucified on the cross was a criminal. And the book of Deuteronomy says, "Cursed be the one who dies on the cross." Cursed is the person who dies on the cross. It's a shameful thing to talk about the cross before the crucifixion of Jesus. So it symbolized everything you can imagine that is negative. But with the crucifixion of Christ, that meaning changed. No wonder St. Paul will tell us in his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 1, that the message of the cross is a stumbling block for the Jews. They can't understand it. That we preach a Christ crucified, for the Jews it's a stumbling block because they know what the message of the cross signified. And St. Paul went ahead to say that for the Greeks, it is a symbol of foolishness. It doesn't make sense to glory in the cross of Christ. It does not make sense. So for the Jews, it's a stumbling block. For the Greeks, it's foolishness. And St. Paul concludes, but for us who are Christians, it is the power of God at work. That's a new meaning that the crucifixion of Jesus Christ gave the cross. And because of this new meaning, the early Christians, the apostles, the early church preached in the name of the crucified Christ. And the work of evangelization started because of the power of the cross of Christ. Incidentally, by the first century, by the second century, the persecutions could not allow the spread of the good news to spread the way it should have been. Persecutions came until Emperor Constantine came on board. You remember the edict of 313 AD, the edict of toleration, where Emperor Constantine granted freedom of worship to all in the empire. And because of that, the mother, Helena, started moving around the holy places to discover where Christ lived, the miracles performed, and the events that surrounded the public ministry of Jesus Christ. It was in the course of those discoveries that the exact wood of the cross of Jesus Christ was discovered. And with that discovery, with Emperor Constantine, a church was built over that holy site in 335 AD on September 14. So that discovery was a sign of hope and joy for the entire Christendom, so to speak. Because that wood of the cross, people were using it to receive miracles. The relics of the very wood of Christ became a relic for miracles. And so what we celebrate today is the exaltation, the triumph of the cross of Christ. That's what we celebrate, especially on the basis of the discovery made about the exact wood of the cross of Christ by Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, back in 335 AD that the church was built over that holy site. So since then till now, the church has always, on the 14th of September, celebrated the exaltation of the Holy Cross. Today, what does this feast say to you and to me? Before the Mass, I did ask us to pay attention to the entrance antiphon of today's Mass, drawn from the letter of St. Paul to the Galatians chapter 6, verse 14 to be precise, where St. Paul invites us to glory in the cross of Christ, through which we are saved, we receive salvation. That's the high point of what we celebrate in today's feast. That the salvation has been brought to us through the cross of Jesus Christ. So once again, as you look up to the cross, what that cross says to us is that through the power of Christ, through the power of the cross, we can also overcome whatever shame, whatever sorrow, whatever pain we go through in life. How? Let me take you back to the first reading of today. When the people of Israel were bitten by the serpent, what happened? God commanded that a serpent be made, so that that thing that was a point of pain and shame and sorrow now became a point of salvation and healing. And if we draw that to the cross of Christ, what was a sign of shame, pain, and sorrow has become the power of God for salvation. That's the message of the first reading of today. If we apply that to the cross of Christ, that's the power of salvation. And today, by the merits of the cross of Christ, we become victorious over the crosses that come our way, over the shame that come our way, over the pain that come our way, over the challenge that come our way. So that each time you make the sign of the cross, you are beckoning on the power of the crucified Christ. You are calling on the name of the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, that by the merits of the passion, death, and resurrection of Christ, salvation will also be brought to us. St. John Chrysostom says, it is not enough to make the sign of the cross externally. It is more important to pay attention to the mysteries that the sign of the cross represents. And that is what we celebrate today, my dear brothers and sisters. So each time we look up to the cross, think about the mysteries that the cross represents. Think about the victory that Christ brought through his cross. Think about the triumph that Christ brought through his victory on the cross of Calvary. And think about how that power of God will also be at work in your life, in my life, and in the life of all Christians. My prayer for all of us in this church today is that by the merits of the cross of Christ, you and I will forever remain victorious over the situations, the tribulations, and the challenges we go through in life. Today, let us lift up the holy cross of Christ and glory in it, because in it is our salvation, our restoration, our healing, and our sanctification. Happy feast day, my dear brothers and sisters.